Good afternoon, everyone. We're on our third set of video notes. It's going to be labeled Chapter 1, Lesson 3, Multiplying Linear Expressions. So, I want you to write down everything that I'm writing down. Well, everything that I wrote down. So, your first one you should start with is called your key info. Now, your key info is telling us what we should know before we start this lesson. The first thing that you need to know, and the only thing, is your distributive property. Now, distributive property is when an integer or number is multiplied to other integers that are inside a parenthesis set. So say, for instance, we have a parentheses b plus c. Now, if you look closely, there are arrows. This is your distributing process. So when they mean by distribute, it means you're just going to multiply. So it's going to be a times b plus a times c. So as you can see, they are being multiplied to each of these terms are inside. So this can be integers or this can be variables. In our case, this was variables. So let's try out our first example. So we have example 1, which is your linear expression. We're going to multiply that, or basically distribute. So it's 4.5 parentheses y plus 7.5. So the first thing you're going to do is distribute 4.5 inside the parentheses. So it's going to look like this. 4.5 times y plus 7.5 as seen below. So we just distribute. Then we went ahead and simplified it. So now we're going to 4.5 times y. That cannot go together because that's an integer and a variable. They're unlike terms. So they just stand side by side. However, if you look onto the side of here, we did a little something with multiplication. We did 4.5 times 7.5. So excuse the mess. So when you're doing multiplication of decimals, you need to count how many integers are behind a decimal point. So we have 2 because we have 2 decimals. So 4.5 and 7.5. The total amount of numbers behind the decimal point are 2. So we're going to put that in that corner where it says 2 so that we know how many spaces do we need to go to make our decimal correct. So whenever you're doing double digits or triple digits or anything like that, you're always starting with the right side, smallest unit, and making your way to the biggest unit. And you're doing the same thing. So when we do 5 times 5, we should get 25. So we drop our 5 and carry our 2. Then we do 5 times 4. And 5 times 4 gives us 20, plus that 2 we carried makes it 22. So now it's 225. Then we move all the way over to our 7. So since we went to our 7, which is in our tens place or the next hundreds place, whatever it is, we always put a 0. So now it's going to be 0. And then we start out doing 7 times 5. So 7 times 5 should get you to 35. And 35, you bring down your 5 and you bring your 3 up. So now 7 times 4 should get you 28. And 28 plus that 3 gets you 31. So now it's 3,150. Now that we have the multiplication out the way, we are now going to start adding. So we start from our least, which is all the way to the right. 5 plus 0 is just 5. 2 plus 5 is just 7. And 2 plus 1 is just 3. and we bring down our 3 because there's nothing to add it to. So the answer to that should be 3375. So now you need to remember, we have decimals. We need to move 2 spaces to the left, because one thing you should always remember, every whole number has a decimal at the end of it. It's just invisible. So now we need to move that decimal how many spaces to the left? 2. So now it's 1, 2. So now it's going to be 33.75. So our answer is going to be reorganized, and now it's going to be 4.5 times y plus 33.75. So all we did was simply distribute. Now on to example 2. We're going to multiply linear equations or expressions. Now, quick thing to note, an expression is basically an equation without an answer. So example 2, we're going to multiply this linear expression, 5 times 9 minus 2/3, and we have parentheses, times 9 times 9 times n. So just like in the first example, you're going to distribute. Distribute simply means multiply your outside integer or variable inside the parentheses to each of these terms. So now it's going to be 5n times 9n minus 2/3 times 9n. So first things first, if you're multiplying variables with coefficients or just variables, and they have the same type of variable or letter, your letter slash variable is now going to be squared, because n times n, we don't know what that is, so we know it's going to be 2 pairs, so it's now going to be n to the 2nd power. So what's 9 times 5? That should give us 45. So now it's 45n to the 2nd power. We're going to bring down our operation symbol, which is minus or subtraction. So down here, we're going to do our multiplication of our fraction and our coefficient and variable. So one thing you should always remember, whole numbers, even whole variables, are always over 1. Their denominator is 1, and whatever they are is going to be their numerator. So now, you need to remember this one rule too. Whenever you multiply a positive and a negative, your result is always going to be a negative. So, we're going to do n9 over